Eben, opening question for you, but I want to first start by saying Eben dropped in and his camera was off, and I was listening to his voice, and he said the word "dude," and I don't know if you get this, but you sound like one of my favorite actors, Jeff Bridges in The
Yes.
Big Lebowski. You have a little bit of that, which
Yeah.
is a compliment.
Thank you. I take it as that, man. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. He's one of my favorite characters. I love Jeff Bridges too. So,
Oh my God! If you're listening and not watching, listen to his voice. He sounds like a young Jeff Bridges. Anyway, here's the opening question. What is one thing you know about yourself today that you didn't know like just a year ago? Or about life, love, any new recent revelation?
mm, great question. Um, Something I know about myself today that I was not aware of a year ago is how important family is to me.
Mm.
The last year in particular was a bit of a crucible for me, as it sounds like for a lot of people it might have been. Um, and through it all, I feel as though the thing that's emerged for me is like as the number one priority in my life is my family.
So when you say family, you're talking about mom, dad, siblings, or you're talking about do you have a child of your own like family?
I have a daughter. I have a 13-year-old daughter,
Mm.
and her, uh, my girlfriend slash life partner now, but kind of, my parents got divorced when I was 7, and it was cataclysmic, for me. It was one of those defining traumas of my life.
Yeah, of course. At that age, man, 7. Fuck. That's you're that's the wonder years, That's when the world is big and you're so curious and you're a sponge. And so when your parents decide not to love each other anymore, that can be crippling for a 7-year-old.
Yeah, it was, and it was shattering, and so, and all the stuff that, unfolded out of that, and who I, worked myself into being through football and all the different things that I've done, and
Well, let's tell everyone because the reason why you're on here is because I came across your videos like maybe like a year ago. And man, I loved what you were saying, but more importantly, I loved the I mean, I guess I should say I was attracted to, I was drawn to the package it came in, right?
mm,
So in my world as a licensed therapist, not a lot of men having these kind of conversations, especially early on when I started 2010, but also not a lot of men who like was in the NFL who can grow a full beard. And I think I was drawn to like because you have a lot of masculine kind of traits, but then you're able to talk about things that are deeper, sensitive, spirit.
right.
And I really feel like that combination is rare and potent. And so that's what drew me to you. Um, I don't know if this is true, but I read somewhere at age 8, speaking of at age 7, at age 8, you knew you wanted to be in the NFL, play football professionally or no?
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Yeah, I just got this divine transmission. I don't know how else to.
Mm.
It was like that's who I want to be when I grow up. That's what I want to do. And
Was your dad an athlete or was there
dad,
athletes around you?
yeah, my family is this really interesting mix of athletes and artists.
Oh,
And
nice.
my dad was a D1 basketball player. My mom was a lifetime athlete.
Wow.
And both of them are artists in their own way. My mom was a journalist in the fashion world for many, many years, and also writer by trade. And my dad's a painter, and
Mm.
my grandmother on my mom's side is an Academy Award winning actress, and
Holy shit.
yeah, there's a
What
lot
an
of
amazing environment to grow up in. So, like,
yeah,
left
yeah,
brain and also physical excellence, the ability to be an artist, be creative, and also like throw a football around. That's amazing.
Yeah, it was special, man. It was special, and I recognize that today for sure, and we've got our shit too. There's a lot of a lot of
Hmm.
dysfunction.
Hmm.
Oh, a lot of alcoholism, a lot of
Yeah, me too.
addiction and mental health stuff that for the most part has never been not even really addressed, but never been allowed or understood even, you know.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, but it was perfect for me because that really set me up for this journey I've been on, And what you, I think, saw because I was kind of like years into this unfolding that I've been on,
yeah.
of the masculine, like just picking up the hammer or the battle axe
Hmm.
got to the point where it wasn't working anymore, and
So
so
let me ask you this: when was that point? What was your bathroom moment when you're like, "This isn't working anymore"? I'm assuming you're talking about NFL locker rooms. That kind of sometimes can be like posturing, toxic masculine.
yeah,
Just
like
get strong, dominate,
yeah,
achieve.
and just living for a mission, which for me at that time was football,
Yeah.
and then it's like women and whatever I could get into my body to make me feel something else,
Right.
whether it was alcohol or pills or weed or whatever.
Wait, how old were you at that point?
I was 21 when I went into the
Oh, wow.
NFL.
Dude, young.
Yeah, yeah, so
Yeah.
young,
Wow.
so young.
What did you play? What position?
I was an offensive lineman. I was offensive
Nice.
tackle.
Right.
And so 2016, I left the NFL in 2014. I was 28 years old. And around 2016, my whole world was just crashing down on me, you
Mm.
know. Like
Mm.
I couldn't stand who I was seeing in the mirror anymore, you know.
Why? Did something happen or was this like a slow burn?
It was a slow burn to, none of the escape valves were working and I had to reconcile with myself and people in my life, like the damage I'd caused and, kind of the wreckage that my life had felt had revealed itself to be in my heart, at least.
Mm.
On the outside, it looked pretty good.
Right.
I don't think
Right.
anybody thought, what's wrong with Eb? But
Hmm.
inside, I couldn't even breathe, you know.
And did you first turn to substances or addictions first to numb or no?
Uh, Certainly. To
Yeah.
numb, to escape, to feel something other than being in my body,
Hmm.
something that I ended up actually, I mean, and the journey continued from 2016 until, and had done a lot of work, a lot of therapy, a lot of,
Hmm.
had some really great mentors, a couple of men came into my life who were very important for me and pointing me in the right direction and did some, plant medicine stuff and got into breath work, came back to
Yeah.
yoga. Uh, my mom was taking my brother and I to yoga from the time I was 10 years old, so that was always this kind of
Wow.
important through line that I came back to and started teaching yoga and all that stuff. But even through that, I mean, last October, once again, I was caught in some pretty difficult patterns, and I checked myself into a treatment center,
Mm.
and
Residential for can I ask for what substance or just
really, I mean, it was kratom and cannabis,
hmm.
and cannabis had become because when I came out of the NFL, I did a lot of speaking on cannabis as an important piece of an important remedy for dealing with concussions
Right.
for NFL players, and also as something that could be looked to as an alternative to opiates. Towards the end of my football career, I had, was really only using cannabis as pain management, and it was it was really beneficial for me during that time, but over the years, you just kind of keep using it, and it becomes something else. It just
Yeah.
becomes kind of a crutch.
Hey, real quick,
And
I saw a clip with, you and Snoop Dogg, so the cannabis tracks for sure. I was like,
yeah, yeah. I
yeah.
mean, I started this podcast with Mike Tyson back in 2017 called Hot Boxing.
Wow.
And it was all centered around Mike's. I got introduced to Mike to be sort of a mouthpiece, spokesperson, athlete liaison for his cannabis company called Tyson Ranch. And even then, I'd be in there and it's just like weed smoke is in the air, and it's
Yeah.
just like one joint after the other. And I'd be having these like fucking out of body experiences that were not fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was already starting this like, okay, this isn't really working for me anymore. It's not really doing what it used to do for me, which is kind of like soften the physical and the mental strain that I was experiencing, and allowing me to rest. But it was like it was sending me just directly into fight or flight, you know.
Mhm.
And so last year, I went to a treatment center, um, and I've been working on sobriety ever since, which has been really fucking powerful. And I've shared this on another podcast, I think, but something that was really important that came out of there was this this realization, this coming to terms with the fact that I was sexually abused when I was 8. And it was like, holy fuck, dude! Like everything started to make sense, you
Wait,
know.
was that a memory that was blocked and then it came out as you were going on your, medicine journeys and stuff? Or did you always know that? It's something that
It
you
would
just
it would come up, it would come up, and it was
yeah.
my babysitter's son. It would come up,
Mhm.
and I'd bury it. I'd be like,
Yeah.
no, I'd
Yeah.
rationalize it because I came from a fucking dysfunctional family. I
Mhm.
came from a family that chaos was the status quo,
Right.
you
The
know?
homeostasis, the norm. Chaos was the
So,
norm, yeah.
it wasn't until I was in treatment and I'd had some time to like settle into my body really where I went, "Oh, you know what? I never wanted that." And I felt
Mm.
shame since the moment it happened to me.
Yeah.
Like there's been this low hum of shame in my cells since that moment, you know.
How did that manifest for an 8-year-old? Did you internalize it? Did you just suppress it? Or did you just channel like feelings, anger, rage into football?
That was it, rage became the vehicle of expression, and I
Mhm.
and I think and when I was in treatment, I'd be in meditation because I've been meditating pretty heavily for probably since about 2016, and like every day for the last 8 or 9 years now, and I'd be in meditation and I'd see with this realization of this traumatic memory, I would see my whole life play back.
Mhm.
And I'd look and I'd go, holy shit. How did this is going to sound a little bit accusatory, and I don't mean it that way, but if I was a parent looking at my child and how I was behaving,
Mhm.
I would have 100% thought, what's happening? What's wrong?
Right.
You know?
Right. Yeah.
Like, I
So
would
you're
have
saying
the
your parents didn't notice, your
yeah,
what was happening
yeah,
inside? Yeah. They probably
yeah,
just thought, "Oh,
which
he's just ate."
yeah, he's got a lot of hormones, he's going through
Yeah.
another growth spurt,
Yeah.
he's a big kid, and I don't, I have no feelings whatsoever about that towards my parents in regard to that, but it was interesting to watch, like, as a father and look at my child self and the things that I was experiencing and the outbursts that I had. I was like, wow, that was all that, you
Mhm.
know?
Mhm.
And kind of everything that I've ever done in my relationships and, with myself and partners and friends, like, man, everything was kind of this ripple of feeling so uncomfortable in my own skin for
Yeah.
so long, you know? And so, through the necessity of, like, it was either die or change, which is really what it came down to. In 2016, I was like, I'm either going to kill myself or I'm going to
Mm,
come clean,
mm.
and just start living in truth and with authenticity and and that was the beginning of it all for me.
There's a, book I'm listening to called The Tell, and, it's about a woman who, went on a MDMA medicine journey, and in that journey, she had a memory, and that memory was, sexual abuse, I think when she
Mm,
was 13. I just went on my first, like, 7-hour MDMA journey, which was profound, I loved it.
wow.
And then I just held space recently with my medicine, woman uh, to have other people go on their journeys. And man, it's fascinating what comes up, and in that altered state, you know,
Hmm. Yeah.
what we remember, or even getting to, like, for me, getting to a place of groundedness that I can't get to myself with meditation or motorcycles or fitness or ice plunges. Getting to a calmness that my body has never experienced through plant medicine, or through
Yeah.
MDMA in this case. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah.
What was it like for
Well,
you when you started to do medicine journeys?
just giving a lot of context. I think, like what you're saying,
Hmm.
providing a lot of context to the experiences that, like you said, I wasn't able to see before, which brought a lot of peace
Yeah.
and a lot of compassion and a lot of
Yeah.
understanding that's been necessary for me, on this journey that I've been on, that we're all on. I think context is really important. It's interesting because I've I became a student of, like, spiritual gurus, like
Hmm.
Ram
Hmm.
Dass and
Yeah.
Maharaji and
Wayne Dyer.
Vivekananda, all the
Yeah. Yeah.
great ones. And
Right.
it's interesting because in a lot of the deep spiritual teaching, there's this idea that, like, Ram Dass has even talked about it, especially from his standpoint as having been a therapist or a psychologist,
Hmm.
saying that, that mode of understanding is so context based and process oriented.
Hmm.
But from a deeper spiritual place, there is no need for context. It just is.
Mm.
And I've sat with that. I've spent a lot of time sitting with that idea because I'm a really deep thinker. And I was at a wedding this past weekend and got to reconnect with a good friend who's a medicine man. And I was telling him about these things that have started to come up in this new sort of revelation I'm having as being a father, and what that means to me and how
Hmm.
important that is to me.
Hmm.
And it's led me on this interesting sort of replay of, like, my childhood my father, my grandfather,
Mhm.
me being a young father with my daughter, and things that I'm like, God, I wish I was a little bit better there. Like I wish I was a little more conscious when she was 4, you know,
Right.
and kind of feeling the heartbreak of being a human, dude. It's
Oh,
fucking
you mean watching her go through life, like, and
well,
then the struggles, or what do you mean by heartbreak?
it's it's like it's heartbreaking to be a human. You
Oh,
know,
in general, yeah.
just in general.
Yeah.
We're very you know, we're we're pretty while we're super resilient and really profound creatures, we're also so fragile, and so like
Delicate.
delicate, you
Yeah.
know?
And also, I don't know what other species is, so hard on themselves.
Yeah,
Internalization,
exactly.
like the shame piece. I don't think, like, bears live with shame. I don't know, or
Yeah, I don't
dogs
think
or kids.
so.
Yeah. Um,
No, totally. And and it was just I was sharing that with him, and he was like, "Eben, you know, it's like Eben, the of all the things I lost, I miss my mind the least." And he's like,
mm.
"Don't spend too much time thinking, dude, you know?"
Wait, who said this?
This was my friend, who I
Oh, the man. Okay.
reconnected with
Right, right.
at this wedding, and he's a medicine man. And,
Yeah.
and he just said, he was like, "Yeah, you know, you're a deep thinker and you're sensitive." And he's
Mhm.
like, "Don't think too much, because all we have is now. Like in
Right.
this moment now, everything is totally perfect,
That's very
you
Ram
know?"
Dass.
Yeah.
I thought you were saying that Ram Dass did that to you personally. I was like,
No,
"Wow."
no,
Yeah.
no. No, I've only been a student of Ram Dass through, through proxy, through his
Yeah. Yeah.
his teachings and his talks. But no, this was my friend, and it was like, yeah, because we can drift into the past, we can drift into the future, and I
Mhm.
do that constantly.
Of course, me too.
And it's so painful. it's so it's so fucking painful. And
Yeah.
he's like, man, just the practice. He's like, there's no process, but there's practice. And I was like, okay, yeah, I can dig that. But I think going back to the point that I had of sitting with this idea of there's no process, there is only what is,
Right.
so if you feel pain, that's true. It's not to spiritually bypass that we feel pain or suffering, but just that's enough for what the work that we need to do to move forward
Mhm.
is understanding there's something off or something out of alignment or something that needs to be brought into harmony or accepted or reconciled. And I think that in the West, and particularly in America, because of how conditioned we are in materialism, there certainly, and it's certainly been true for me, that there has had to be an element of process to get to where I can go, oh, it's about the practice of just coming back to center over and over again, rather than having to live in the trauma. Because I
Yeah.
think in the healing community, and I mean, dude, I have a lot of questions for you too, and maybe I'll have to have you on my pod, but, you know, the healing community has kind of gotten, it's really fakakta in the modern age.
Yeah, you mean because of social media, there's definitely a
Yeah,
crust to it. There's a tap dancing that's now
yeah,
lined
yeah.
with, yeah.
And it's not really helpful because it kind of it's sort of, it's coaxed people into thinking or believing that that, oh, your pain doesn't matter. Like you'll heal. When you heal, there's no such thing as your pain anymore. Like for
Mhm.
me, that shit's there, man. It's here. It's part of the picture.
Yeah, yeah.
So then it has to be about something else at this stage. Like how like the reconciliation has to be an allowance of all the pain, all the wounds that I've ever had,
Yeah.
rather than deciding that they don't exist anymore, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are looking for shortcuts. I think the demand for listicles and steps and the word tools has created this kind of idea and a little bit of false advertising as far as what healing looks like. It's 3 steps, or it's and there's also a lot of bypassing, a lot of denial, disguised as wellness, and so
Yeah.
that's happening as wellness has become, the cool kid in the quad, right, in the last like 10 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I like that you're just honest, man. This is why I was drawn to you. Is you seem like someone who just speaks his truth, and the truth is, and this is also what makes, I think, humans, our species, kind of sad. We spend most of our adult lives healing from our childhood.
Mm,
And
yeah.
that's already like, fuck, it's like
I
such a
know.
sad thing. But
I
the
know.
beauty of it is, I do believe, as you go on your, hero's journey, and as you go through your character arc, who you become at the end of that is, I think there's
Mm,
magic there. I think you can
no
become a
doubt.
powerful catalyst, a conduit to greater things. So it's almost like we have to go through trauma and shit in childhood to then, as an adult, go on a journey of healing, and then at the end at the end of that, there is this enlightened, or a higher being that can manifest from, the shattering.
100%. Yeah, 100%.
But lots of pain. You're right, man. Lots of pain, lots of spinning, lots of hurting other people, lots of self
Yeah.
doubt, and that's,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's hard. It's sad. And, I look at it from, I'm a believer in, you know, our soul came into this body for a reason, and we've done
Hmm.
it many, many times over many lifetimes, and maybe in different forms. Have you ever read this book, Journey of Souls? Maybe you think it's totally
No, but
out
I'll
of
check it out. I'll
control, but
listen to it. Journey of
uh,
Souls. Okay.
it was by this guy, Dr. Michael Newton, who used hypnosis to regress people back
Mm,
through past lifetimes and in between lifetimes, like what
right.
it's like at source. And he did thousands and thousands of regressions, and everybody has the same thing. The soul leaves the body and it goes into this soul school where it's like you learn about, you know, like you just get you get the whole story, the whole context about what you were there to do, the why you were there, the next life you're going to live.
Mm,
Okay, because the soul and the being, the animal human, are like two separate entities. And we have that. We have the God consciousness that's,
right.
and then we've got this animal thing. We're an animal.
Instincts, ego. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And it's like they're kind of co
Right.
they're in
Conflict.
this relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's a lot of really interesting stuff in that book, but one thing it brings me a lot of peace because I go, you know what? We're just here on this trip, man. We're here on this trip to do these things, to learn these lessons, to make right where we can, where we have the capacity for it. And I think there's a lot of work that it's impossible to get it all done in one lifetime too.
Mm,
And so with that, it's like, yeah, we can be easier on ourselves. We can
be more
we
patient. Be
be
more
more
patient.
patient.
Yeah.
We can like when I was just full blown using, like getting up, waking up in the morning. And this is pretty recent too, man. Like, I'd get up, my routine was like take a hit of weed, make
Hmm.
my coffee,
Hmm.
jump in the ice tub, do my thing, like, and it worked for a little while, but the underlying issue was that I had an incapacity to be with myself as I am,
Right. Like you needed that as a kind of a crutch, or some kind of
like a
that was,
buffer. It
Buffer,
was
yeah.
like, being Eb is just it's too much, dude.
Right. Just you solo. No, just
Yeah.
like naked. Right, right.
Yeah, yeah. It's like I needed a little bit of a cushion between me and myself and reality.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's a problem. That it was a problem for me, or at least it was an interesting mode of learning for me, because the magic of life really lives in being with what is, moment by moment.
Well, let me
As
ask you this, because I
yeah,
agree with that. I'm also, I'm 52, moving into the afternoon of my life. I have a 5-year-old. I love what you said about family because what a great note to self this morning. Um, I'm obsessed with the here and now, as you are, but it's hard to execute in the world. It's hard to
yeah, yeah,
execute when you're paying taxes and trying to make a
totally.
living and go work on yourself and also like juggle a relationship and friendships and all that, to not live in the past, or like to not live in distorted thought, to not fall into the slippery well, and to just be here present. Dude,
Mm,
that's not a light switch. I know
totally.
very few people, I mean, unless you're like a fucking Buddhist that just is not living in this world. How do you, in the city, like actually execute that? Because for me it's like a skipping stone. It's just moments. It's
Uh-huh.
not, I can't execute that shit all day. It's
No,
too
no,
hard.
100%, 100%. I can't either. I mean, one thing that's been helpful is I moved out into the country. I moved out of the
Mm,
city and into
mm.
the country.
Where are you right now?
I'm in Texas. I'm in the
Okay.
hill country. I'm about an
Yep.
hour outside of Austin.
Yep.
We live on 5 acres. It's
Oh,
it's
wow.
beautiful, man.
Living that ranch life.
Yeah, dude. But I do travel back to LA pretty
Mhm.
frequently, at least once a month for a stretch of 2 to 3 weeks at a time to spend time with my daughter.
Oh, got it.
And then in a few weeks, she's going to come out here for summer break, and so it's like, but
Wait,
it's
are you on
interesting.
5 acres alone? Are you just by yourself? Or
I'm
you
with
have
my I'm with my
Oh,
girlfriend.
you and your girlfriend. Okay, got it. Got it.
Yeah, and
Wow.
our dog
Nice.
Luna. But yeah, man, it's amazing. And 100%. I think the ultimate spiritual path is cultivating a sense of peace and harmony in your mind and heart while doing the modern day dance, you know?
I see what you're saying. You're saying so the inner journey is not impacted by what's happening in your environment. So kind of going back to stillness here and now while you're in tornadoes or in the city or wherever you are.
That's yoga,
Yeah. Yeah.
That's yoga. I teach Bikram yoga. Bikram is like,
Mhm.
close to my heart because I've been doing it a long time, and it's the guy aside, I'm sure a lot of your listeners probably have seen the documentary on Bikram, which
Oh,
is
right. Yeah,
interesting.
yeah. With the sexual stuff and yeah.
Yeah, and that aside, it's a deeply therapeutic practice. It's a really transformative practice because you're in this fucking swelteringly hot
Heat.
room,
Yeah. Yeah.
and you've got these 26 postures which are the same every time. It's 90 minutes, and you get to really have an experience of yourself.
90 minutes, an hour and a half
Yeah.
in that position in the yeah, that's
Yeah, it's brutal, dude. It's
brutal. Yeah.
brutal. And you're confronted with all this stuff, you
Sure.
know. I,
Yeah.
I mean, I've talked to other teachers and people who are kind of OGs, and I'm like, did Bikram even really realize what he was doing? Like, because this is like an ayahuasca ceremony in 90
Right.
minutes, dude. Like you're confronted with, you know, all your shit, all your anger and rage
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
addictions. You're confronted with it all, and you have to learn. It's a really great dojo for learning how to be good with it all.
Well, this is why people don't sit still. This is why
Exactly.
workaholism and people building empires um, never kind of come back to
One
themselves because they're just using busyness as an escape. But
one
any kind of
hundred
stillness.
percent.
So whether it's an ice plunge or Bikram
Yep.
yoga Or like for me, I fell in love with riding motorcycles.
Yeah, I love
My
that,
my
dude.
partner says you're the most present, and I was hoping she would say the bedroom, but she says on your bike. I'm like, fuck. She's like, when you're on your Harley and I'm on the back, you're the most present, and I'm like, God damn it.
Okay. Take
but
that,
uh, but that's
brother.
also another form of stillness, and I think in
Yeah.
stillness, if you can hold that long enough, shit's gonna come up. Like it's
Yeah,
just that's when it comes up.
exactly, dude. And again, it's not going to be perfect all the time. And to your point, we use a lot of stuff. I used football. I used
Hmm.
drugs. I used
Yeah,
women. I used
yeah,
porn. I used
yeah,
alcohol. Like I whatever I could find to not sit still, to
yeah.
not be with myself. And so going back to your point, no, 100% it is not a switch.
Right.
And 100% you can practice it. You can practice it in the midst of all the stuff, because I don't want to be a monk living in a fucking
Right.
temple.
Right. Yeah.
I
No,
don't.
me either. That's not what's meant for me in this lifetime.
you know?
Yeah, I got shit to do. Yeah.
I want to be in relationships. I want to
Right.
be in love. I want to,
Yeah.
I want to be a father. I want to
Hmm.
make money. I want to proliferate and prosper. Like I want to do a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in that comes with inevitably coming into confrontation or conflict with the outside world.
Hmm.
And, I can, dude, unequivocally say I'm a different man today than I was a year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. And what I mean by that, most importantly, is that in the face of adversity, be that another person who's expressing some heavy emotion or displeasure, I can be with that person and I can respond in a really positive way that moves the thing forward,
Hmm.
that doesn't cause more havoc, doesn't cause more chaos.
Yeah.
And that has been a fucking that has been an exercise, a moment by moment practice of working that in myself
Mm.
and in my life. And going back to this weird commercialization of healing and wellness, it's like I don't give a fuck if you sun your butthole every day or you've done 1,000 ayahuasca journeys or you get in the ice tub, dude. It's like, how are you in your relationships? Like, how
Right.
are you when you're out in the world? Are you
Right.
a fucking positive impact on people or are you a succubus? You know?
Succubus. Oh wow, that's the word of the day. Um, I have tanned my taint once, and it was okay in the backyard of the house
No, I
that
think
burned
it's
down.
great. I think
Yeah,
it's great.
I've only done it once. Yeah, but
How'd it feel?
it
Obviously
felt,
not
dude.
that.
No, it's it's a space that never gets light ever. I mean, think
Uh-huh.
about it.
I know.
And
I
so
know.
just the
I've done it
heat.
as well.
Oh, you
Yeah.
have? Okay, good. Well, I mean,
Yeah,
you're on
yeah.
a ranch.
No.
The natural vitamin D and sunlight in that area feels fucking amazing. It feels like the first time, like stepping into a jacuzzi, right? So,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, but anyway, we're moving to Costa Rica, so I do plan to do it a little more often. Our house burned down
Oh,
in Altadena, so
wow, man.
I'm
I
uh
mean,
I'm I'm in a huge life transition. I'm calling it Act Two, and selling the Harley for a surfboard. And in Costa
wow.
Rica, we're downshifting by nature, and I'm going to try to sit with, because Costa Rica is a Bikram yoga studio. It's a temple, but it's
Yeah.
also
Yeah.
the humidity and the heat itself. It's like
Yeah.
you can't escape that shit. So there's going to be a lot of discomfort, and I'm hoping that environment gets me to be more still, like you are on your ranch.
Yeah, dude. I think it will. Wow, what an incredible transition you're going through,
Yeah,
bro.
I'm gonna document all that. Hey, listen, I could talk to you forever, and maybe we'll do a series, because what I find valuable, and I just want to say to you this as we end. It's not just what you say, because you come off as like an oak tree with a lot of tree rings, right? Like wisdom, which is why
Mm.
people listen to you, watch you. But it's this kind of guy that you could talk to about things like maybe sports or, normal shit or whatever, and then also go deeper. And I think the world needs that, man. And I know
Mm,
I'm drawn to that, which means I know there's a lot of other men drawn to that. So what you end up being is kind of a Trojan horse. What you end up being
yeah.
is a space where men can, chest bump you and then also be honest with themselves. And so that's so needed. And so I just want to thank you for all the work that you're doing and just like putting yourself out there and showing up on podcasts and doing the videos and all the shit.
Thanks, brother. Man, that means a lot to me. I appreciate that.
Yeah. You're having a good conversation when you even forget that you're recording. And so
Yeah,
it just feels like I'm having coffee with you this morning. And one day when you're in Los Angeles, we could have some Korean barbecue.
that sounds great. I love that.
Yeah. All right, Web. Well, thank you so much for being on my podcast, and hopefully you'll be back soon. Where can people find you?
Check me out on Instagram at EDS Britton. Everything I've got going on, you could find it there. So I
Cool.
would say start there. Thanks, brother.
Yeah.
Really
Thanks, brother.
appreciate you, man.
All right, man. Be well.